What trips the trigger? It's always been good clarification on what actually makes it. It depends. It's typically, if it's a commercial product, you need to basically be careful and make sure your dimensions are residential. So I'm rare to see really discriminate. We do have the city limits and this mirrors what everybody uses just as far as the requirements. Yes, that's what I mean. The standard. Yes, but they are very. You were in your parking lot and it was over 10,000. Fire, so a lot of times that's bigger. Yeah. That's intended just a lot of time. If they start holding the line on that, you were like, oh, all right. Just make sure. So it's not, I would have asked. Yeah.
I think it's
but this one, that trip started requiring retention. And a lot of times, if it's already got a bad well,
that's not true. Yeah, that's
if you're
what
paving,
it is,
you're they've been really lenient at that. As long as it's not acres.
Sure.
Which if it is.
I can go wrong there.
Okay. Yeah. You never know. Yeah. Do we need to talk to them at all? Or?
Cost
Is that our alert? We gotta go.
For me, but yeah, you can do that. 7 o'clock.
Call the September 6, 2023 meeting of the Decatur County Area Planning Commission to order. Comply with Title 6, Civil Rights Act of 1964. Decatur County requests that participants in this meeting complete a voluntary anonymous survey available on table in the back of the room. First item on the agenda, approval of July 5th, 2023 minutes. Those were in the packet. Everyone reviewed those. They were fairly short. Have any additions or corrections? If not, I'll look for a motion to accept.
I'll make a motion to accept July minutes.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Minutes are accepted. Our first petition on the agenda, BPC petition 2023-12, Dan and Jennifer Riley. We're petitioning to rezone approximately 2.99 acres out of approximately 12.252 acres from an A1 zoning classification to an A2 zoning classification. Construction of a single-family detached dwelling request falls under Decatur County Ordinance Section number 927 and 915, and is located just west of 5426 South, County Road 20 West, Greensburg, and Marion Township. Dan? Oh, there you are. You guys tell us about your project.
So what's circled up there is correct. We're planning to build a ranch house there.
3-bedroom walkout. We will have to use a water well, and not sure if we'll do propane or look at doing a gas grill for heating.
I'll warn you, it's tough to get water there. You may not have heard that yet, but
Yeah,
have you heard that?
yeah, we've heard it can be tricky.
Yes. You have to get creative. And to access that, so are you guys going, is that across that ditch?
Yes.
Okay.
So we've already reached out with a company, an excavation company, we're gonna get a driveway and confirm that it's gonna be possible.
Yeah, because that's a pretty good ditch there.
Yes.
Anything else you want to see? Board members, do you guys have any questions?
It all looks pretty straightforward. Do you have any questions for us? Any concerns or anything as far as?
Not very far from a pretty waterfall.
Yeah.
See anything, I've got a question on there.
No questions from the board. Do you have any quick comments or concerns from the public? Hearing none, I'll look for a motion.
Make a motion to vote on 2023-12.
Second.
I'll read the votes. Sheila Kirkhoff, yes. Brian Kennelly, yes. Jay Shetmer, yes. Tom Cherry, yes. Brad Studi, yes. Paul Stone, yes. And Tom Hunter, yes.
Your petition passes. Thanks, guys. Keep in touch with the office and you start your venture.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, APC petition 2023-13, Cody and Jacqueline Schneider are petitioning to subdivide approximately 2.99 acres out of 62.7 acres and rezone approximately 2.9 acres from an A1 zoning classification to an A2 zoning classification for construction of a single-family detached dwelling. The request falls under County Ordinance Section number 927 and 915. Property is currently owned by Daryl Saylor and is located just south of 5699 North, County Road 420 West, Greensburg, and Adams Township. So if we can have, there they are, Cody and Jacqueline, you can tell us about your project.
It'll be a 3-bedroom ranch summer house, one well, tools, electric, for everything. Yep, everything, where the stars at is where you're looking at. That's the area, the road is a 50-foot road frontage, and then along our way back.
Board members, you got any questions? And this is a subdividing reason.
So just to the north of where it shows your driveway, that small square, Wells James Square, who owns that?
I do.
There.
You do.
I own everything that's in yellow. Side yellow.
So that's, how big a piece of property is that that's gonna be kind of sectioned off there? That's not.
Kind of orphaned.
Yeah, that's why, and I don't know what we think on that.
It's still gonna be tillable.
Yeah.
I think Ryan's concern is as long as that size,
Big enough for.
big enough, if you were to
Put a house on
attempt to
it.
rezone that.
Yeah.
I would like to eventually put a pole barn for myself there.
Okay.
Because I live just to the north of that in the woods.
Okay, and out right in.
No,
He lives
right there.
Oh, okay.
And that
So
is, that's all downhill and I can't.
It's attached to your property.
Right.
Okay, yeah, I don't
I see.
see a major issue with
I
that.
guess that's where the yellow lines throw it.
Yeah, it's two different parcels. My,
Parcel.
my house is a single
I see.
parcel on its own and then the rest of it's together.
All good. I don't,
That
that
makes
doesn't bother me.
More sense.
Or doesn't. Not me personally, I just didn't know if it was a concern of leaving a little section there, but it's really adjacent to your property, so I don't see it to be a concern for this board.
Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, I'll see if any public comment or concerns from anyone. Hearing none, I'll look for a motion.
Make a motion to vote on APC 2023-13.
I'll second that.
And I'll read the vote. Tom Hunter, yes. Ryan Kennelly, yes. Tom Cherry, yes. Jay Shetmer, yes. Sheila Kirkhoff, yes. Brad Shudy, yes. And Paul Stone, yes.
Okay. Your petition passes. Thank you, guys. Keep in touch with the office as you get started.
All right, thank you.
Next item on our agenda, and actually the next two items is they kind of correspond with each other. It's the first reading of our Decatur County Stormwater Management Ordinance. So this is an updated ordinance to the original, which was 2007, I think, when that was done originally. Very similar in content, but I think basically what's happened now is they've split the technical standards manual out.
Yes. Trying to make it easier, or LTAP put out a model that tried to make it easier for people to understand the stormwater ordinance itself by taking all the technical standards that, and putting them in their own document. That way you have an ordinance that you can work with and that you can read. And if you need to make changes to that, if you see problems, it's easier to make changes than that than try to figure out how to go through those technical standards every time and review those. So it was a model put out by LTAP again. A lot of counties are using it. We made some real minor changes to it, but
The biggest change from our old one is this now requires a permit
yes,
for and that is something we need to discuss, land disturbing activities over 10,000 square feet. We have our exemptions for residential and for ag,
Yes.
so that they're not required, but this is something that Andy and I ran into several years ago with this county schools. I had some questions for you. We were doing parking lot, and at the time, and Andy had a good point, we didn't need a permit for any of our construction, but, so there was no way to enforce this stormwater manual, you know, it was kind of a gray area as to how we dealt with it. So now a permit would be required
Yes.
for any type of parking lot expansion or hard surface in commercial, basically commercial properties.
Right, major subdivisions, stuff like that, those would require
Yeah.
the drainage study.
And that's what I was telling Paul. Really, the only thing that catches us as a county would be our fringe businesses on the west side of town that are on the edge of the city, but still in the county. We catch those, and the schools are kind
Yeah,
of the
and we've
big
had a
ones.
few lately, Nitro, they're
Yes,
expanding, so they had to do a stormwater study. Standard Fertilizer, I think, is going to, so they'll need one in the woods, the event center.
Mhm.
But they had to have stormwater because of the location and the disturbance. And so it's something that we really need.
and the permitting actually gives it some clarification as to what is required and who's required. The
And
ten
it's still
thousand.
very difficult to read, but you can read it. Before, you just get lost after a page or two.
Well, the technical details were all within the document.
Yeah.
Made it. Makes it maybe an appendix or something. But we'll need 2 readings on this regardless, so this is our first one. We can have discussion now about any changes that anybody thinks are necessary. The 10,000 square feet seems to be a common amount.
Right.
I mean, our exception, or our exemptions
10,000 disturbance.
disturbed. So whether it's an addition of building, if you are changing the surface, if it was grass and you're changing it to something else, and technically this
You're
is,
saying changing it, if you're just disturbing more ground by digging putting a house in there.
well, a house still doesn't
Oh,
count.
still
So,
doesn't.
no, residential's exempt. And that's where this is, we gotta remember the clarifications there, the ag and residential, we still keep exempt. So otherwise, they would all, when you put a driveway in it, so, you know,
Like
But
our,
if you
like our
put a-
business would have needed a permit.
yes,
Now, will that, if they're building a new structure, will that be incorporated into
Yes.
one building permit?
yes. It'll be part
It'll
of
be
the,
part of the process.
yeah,
It
it'll
will
be,
not be part of the building permit itself.
It'll
no,
be a separate permit.
Yes.
yeah. And see,
You'll
that
have
it's,
to have that
it's
first,
always
yeah.
technically been there. It's just been hard to understand what trips that trigger. And that's where it's been this kind of gray area.
Nobody's really been able.
So if somebody had engineered plans, the engineers grab these and take care of it. They don't even think about it. But if somebody's building a business and is adding on parking, you
Just
really have
have
to
a
think
owner
about it.
build a building,
Yes.
put the parking
Yes.
lot in, yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. I get
And
it.
that's where it was really confusing for everyone. And this clarifies that a bunch, right out of the gate. So. Clear as mud.
So is the permit through here and then
Yes.
the firm's
Yeah.
hired out to do
Yeah.
the stormwater?
Right.
To
Yeah, there
review.
will be, yeah, the permits, there's an example of permits. I haven't had a chance to look and tweak them
Right.
just yet, but
And it also basically states, so what would happen is it would go through technical review. Ideally, it would go through a technical review. If they deem it too complicated to say yay or nay on, then it would go on for an engineer review. But it would still go through an APC meeting regardless before it's approved, is a way of,
Oh, it wouldn't be just administrative through your
No.
office.
no.
Even if you're producing the stamp drawings, it still comes
Yes.
here.
Yep.
I got you.
Is the city the same way that a board reviews it?
They do all theirs. They have a permanent technical review board that takes care of it. And typically, between them and the engineer, it's taken care of that route. since we don't necessarily have a permanent, technical review board, they kind of take a different approach. And I think some of them still end up going through board of works, don't they?
None of ours have.
They haven't had
Because
to,
we haven't had to.
they've been, engineering's taken care of it.
The water.
Yeah.
side for us. So, just wondering, and I mean, it's not like we can't change the ordinance if we find out that we're spending a lot of
A lot of time.
reviewing something that doesn't need to be reviewed, so maybe.
Yeah, and that's why I'm bringing it up, is it's still through ABC. I think the only nice caveat there is it does give the public a chance to comment on it.
Mhm.
It's my only thought there. In other words, then you're heading off any issues that we've dealt with on, we had some instances on some of the school projects that came up, yeah, which would have been avoided because we would have brought everybody in the room. So that's my only thought.
Is that prior to zoning change? Or,
No,
Because zoning doesn't always have to be changed, it would be probably in, around the same time.
mhm.
or
Yeah, depending on what they
after.
were wanting to zone it for.
I just, if you bought a piece of property and it's zoned ag, and does the zoning get changed prior to that?
It could, and more than likely should.
Should, yeah, that's what
Because
I,
before they spend the money on that, on an engineered study, they would want to make sure they could get it rezoned.
that's what I was.
But then we've got the standards to hold them to give this board the assurance that, yes, we can pass this and it will be contained. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
You know,
does.
that-
Yeah, I just was trying to think through what the steps would be.
Which would probably, similar to the building permit itself, you get the rezone first before you get to the building.
Rezone, then septic, then.
Right.
Well, you get septic approval before you can get rezoning. That's kind of why I was thinking, is that something that has to be done before rezoning? But then you need to know if you need to do it.
And that's something that it would be up to the office to advise them on, because there are some properties that they would definitely want to get some advice before they rezoned it if it was tough to do.
Right.
If it was almost impossible to do, to meet these requirements, then maybe you need to look at what you're doing
Yeah.
before they even mess with trying to rezone.
Well, I completely agree, you hate to, for any of the taxpayers to have to throw money away at
Extra
a lost cause.
Yeah.
And that was what we told NIPRO, when they came to us and they were thinking of expanding, I said, you have got to look to drainage out there.
Yeah.
You really want to look at the drainage and what you're gonna do, because there are water issues out there, and Westport's got water issues, and all the neighbors have water issues, and you really wanna make sure that you don't create additional problems, so we try to guide people, obviously.
That one worked too. It took a couple reviews and they finally got it right. That was the way it should work.
Yes.
Hopefully the realtors are making the offers contingent on all these approvals being passed, and, people aren't totally invested in the property before they know they can do this project.
That's a good point. If this does get passed and approved, I need to send out some kind of notification to
Realtors.
anybody that might come upon this that are aware.
To clarify that it is now a permit.
Right, because this would qualify for someone building a pond, correct? And pond's probably gonna be over 10,000 square feet. They have to come BZA.
That's something that we would probably want to clarify in this, because you're in that personal use area. Is it like a garage or is it?
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I know, and that's something we need to
And
clarify.
I didn't find it in here.
Because we
what I was
discussed
looking
that.
for.
I know, we discussed that when we did the review, and they were kind of the same way. It's an exemption thing. You need to decide if you want it exempt, or if you want to put a whole section in here dedicated to that, because I wouldn't be opposed to that either.
But even a home building, right? How big are they? Well, yeah, but a pond's personal.
I know, and that's the,
Or ag, yeah, or ag.
yep. Yeah,
That's
that's
the
the thing.
pond would always be to the positive of some kind of stormwater control. wouldn't
That's
it?
kind of what I
mean, it would
No.
slow.
No.
No,
No, because you can backwater onto someone else, and that's where we run into trouble.
Or your overflow.
Yeah,
Creative.
depending on direction of where the water, changing the water flow. Believe it or not, I mean,
Yeah,
it
they've got-
would be properly designed, it always does, because you're retaining water, you're slowing it down. So it's helping it downstream. But as long as it's designed right. And we had an instance at BZA recently where I basically requested a set of plans because what they were telling me just didn't make sense.
And we've had some that did make sense and they didn't work out quite right.
Yes, and that's where I don't, I mean, even just a set of plans to prove with, and I basically requested surveyor shots on this because we need a way to check it. How do you know? How do you,
Yeah.
without that, or a stamped set of plans, or at least something to go by, and that's where we've run into trouble.
so basically, I think it comes down to your comfort of whether or not you want to be a shot caller of if we want to put this every pond through this process, or is that as the.
Well, the thing with the ponds though, the majority of it go through BZA. Not all,
Not anymore.
well, not all,
Right.
but
If they cannot meet the specific set of standards, there's, 10 questions. If they can't answer yes to all 10 questions, then they have to come to BZA. But if they answer those questions correctly, then they put the pond in. But we always let them know if there are issues down the road, it's on you. You
Yeah.
cannot.
which
cannot
it doesn't
put
even
water
have to,
or-
the thing of that is, it doesn't even have to be a pond. I've seen drainage changes done that affect things just the same. It's over 10,000 square feet. It wasn't even ag, it was personal, but it's the same thing. So you're gonna split some hairs there
Yeah,
regardless. So I don't know if we need something in this, I hate to regulate it to death too.
Correct.
With our 10 questions, it seems to catch our problems. It's done a pretty good job so far of throwing up the red flag and getting them in front of BZA. Then, because typically when that happens, we do have a bunch of neighbors who have a lot of issues with the setup or whatever, and then we can sort that out.
Should ponds even be a BZA function, and should that be part of this as an EPC function?
The reason that they went to BZA is because it's kind of a change of land use thing, and it's not, the APC, technically, we do ordinances and we rezone. And the BZA handles the backside of that when you're going against an ordinance, or you're doing something that's kind of, and that's why it ended up with BZA.
I always thought it was odd that it was a zoning appeals board function.
Yeah. The
I mean, it would seem like it
technology
would
seems
be
to
more
be
of an area
backwards.
planning function than a zoning appeals function.
I think the reason it got put there was because it's a change in from intended use, it's kind of a conditional use,
Well, it just seems like it goes there because the APC doesn't have provisions to handle it more so. I mean, it truly is it is an area planning function, not necessarily an appeal kind of a thing. But regardless, I think that's probably a semantics thing, but.
yeah.
But if
I agree.
Maybe it is right that it comes out of BZA, it goes
Well,
into a stormwater
And then
function.
basically, good job, Paul, we're tying into our comp plan and ordinance discussion all at the same time here, which is something that could be remediated to put that into the APC. But I think if you put it to the APC, you need to be very technical in our stormwater ordinance with some more clarification about what we would require if, and we need to look at the 10 questions and say, okay, if you pass these 10 questions, you're still okay. But if not, then here's what you need.
Right.
Does that make sense to where it would?
I almost feel like that a pond and a large growth area, in anything, no matter what the use is, if it's over a certain number of square foot of growth area, I get it that you're raising pond, but it's a commercial function at that point.
I do agree.
If you're changing runoff in some fashion above a certain criteria, whether that's acres of water retention, or if that is number of square foot of roof penetrating surface, that it would seem like it would fall into a stormwater.
Yes. So we've had this conversation because there's a fine line between commercial and ag.
There,
I mean,
In the state of Indiana.
yeah,
And I did.
that's, which that's, has nothing to do with this, so we
Right.
could look at it in that aspect, and honestly, the individuals that I've talked to aren't opposed to that at all, because it's not that big of a burden. They understand that process, and I agree on that aspect of it. You almost need a square footage, if it's an acre, if it's, which 43,560 square feet is not that much at all. 208 by 208. I mean, there needs to be a number there if we want to go that route.
Yeah.
Do we have any public input? Thoughts?
So we've brought a whole bunch of interesting points here, and I'd really like everybody to take a look at it, talk
Yes.
to people.
Yeah, because we're
I'd really like
not
some input.
we're not in a hurry.
Yeah, no.
I would rather get it right than.
do we know, from a paralleling standpoint, how surrounding counties handle pond permits currently? Is that a
They
feasible
don't.
function? They generally don't.
I'm sorry, tell me exactly.
Pond permits.
Pond permitting, whether surrounding, I'm sure Franklin probably does not, but,
Most places.
do not.
Yeah, even Bartholomew. Not rural.
I think the state's got some rules on ponds.
So DNR does, and that's
Yes.
based on your dam height or pool surface area. So you can't have over 20 foot of dam height from original ground. Then it kicks into a DNR lake, which is a whole nother animal in itself. Then it requires inspections every 5 years or something. So the 20-foot height that's what you're thinking of. And then there's also,
The depth thing there, if it's over 25 feet, there's an issue with the state too.
yeah, and typically your dam will hit that first. In other words, you're also, your stream, the amount of water that flows through it. So if you're over an acre or over, what is it, Andy, 100 acres of drainage, which, believe it or not, there's been some people that have built some ponds in drainage ways that move that much water, but there's also a amount of area draining into it
The triggers.
that trigger that.
Yeah, levy inspection, I think it's about every 2 years.
Yeah, there's several ponds in this county that are under that, and they just picked them back up actually within the past 15 years and started inspecting them. They went a lot of years and
Well, they never miss me. They hit me every 2 years.
Yeah,
That's probably from a long-term strategic standpoint. I mean, obviously it functions okay now, but it would seem like any change of how we handle surface water would go into this document, probably getting out of zoning appeals function.
I'm in favor of that, and I would like some more input on it as far as put your head into thinking about what qualifies. Because it's what you run into in a lot of these facilities, just the drive alone and a parking area or a turnaround area and a building, you're running into a lot of square footage. So we want to clarify.
Yeah.
And that we can ask the engineers that as well, because I know that they've broached that issue a couple of times.
One other thing I saw that I was, says in the first paragraph too, says also exempt from this ordinance shall be the agricultural land disturbing activities, but I think I requested that the engineer, put in here, the state code for private drainage and waterways. This way, the county stays out of it. This way, when two neighbors come in and they're fighting because one of them blocked up the waterway or a creek is backing up the water, you can just handle this ordinance and say, well, this is a civil matter. We don't have regulated drains in Decatur County. you know, right here is where it says in our drainage ordinance, take that to your attorney and, you know, we don't want these people keep trying to drag the county into these drainage problems like the.
But they actually explained that to us completely differently. They said that the ordinance is actually at the state level, the way we're set up in our county now.
Okay.
That it actually goes back to the surveyor. And because we quizzed them on that and said, what do we do? And that's what they do all the time. And they said, the way you're set up right now, technically, they can take, if somebody has that issue, they take the ordinance to you and you have to enforce it. You start the whole ball rolling. Because we did quiz them on that exact thing, trying to get it.
Also, because if it's a private, if
That's,
it's private property,
but that's the state ordinance. That's the way the state ordinance reads.
Yeah, but
Is,
then there's all kinds of other little things.
yeah, but we quizzed them directly on it that
Yeah,
day.
that if you have regulated drains and if you have drainage.
But we
board,
don't.
If you don't have a board.
That was the thing. They said, the way that you guys are set up right now, he said, we've set many drainage boards up in counties based on a state ordinance, which is in place, and it says your commissioners set it up, all of that. It's very easy to do to follow that, but they said also, if you have none of that, it defaults to the county surveyor and they have to get it started. So that is where,
Yeah, see, I don't necessarily, I don't really agree with that because we have a drainage ordinance. And it says.
but it has
that it's
nothing to do
APC,
with that.
But it says that all problems go to the APC and a technical review board and an engineer.
Right,
We
but
don't
that,
have.
that's the problem. We don't, that is not how the state code to set up a drainage board,
Yeah,
is-
that's-
that is the way it needs to be done. If we're not that way, then we don't fall into that category. That's how they explained it. They said what we have does not drop us into that category. I'm not saying we don't need that, but.
because I mean, you know, if you don't have a drainage board, you're kind of commissioners for the drainage.
Exactly.
Right, but they don't enforce that statute. In other words, it goes to the surveyor, because they read that to us. Because we quizzed them hard on it, because I was the same way. I'm like, why can't we put this in here? And they said, because that is not what this is. They said, if you want to set that up, that needs to be a totally separate entity to handle those issues.
So let's say you had some kind of a situation where you had two private agricultural situations. And we have seen this in recent years where someone changes a waterway and it causes a supposed backup into another field. In our case, where we would not have a drainage board, where we would have a panel of local so-called experts to review the data, how would we move forward currently? I mean, I can see where the commissioners would be I can see where the commissioner would be the enforcer of what we decide, but how do we decide the elevations and things like that? I mean, what, in our current situation, what does happen as far as if we need to go out and decide, all right, this water's coming here at 8 feet above, and it's, you know, how does this county currently?
Yeah, how do
handle
I go out and say, oh, well,
We-
you should have
we
had
don't.
an 8 inch.
We don't. That's what we asked them, and they said that's why it goes to the county surveyor. Because,
But our ordinance, the current ordinance says that I need to go out and look at it and decide whether.
and that's wrong. Per the state statute, that's wrong.
Who were you talking to?
What's her name? Yeah,
Gary?
LTAC?
yes, yep. Gary, and who was the other one? Because I pinned him down on it exactly like you're saying, and he said, no. The way you're set up without, because he pulled that same statute out that states your county commissioners have to set up a drainage board. And if you don't, he said, if this does not happen, then it falls back to the surveyor.
We need to get this in text, right? I mean, with this point, we need to find out actually the right.
I don't know if I missed the email or how I did not get invited to that meeting, but I
You
feel like,
were, and it was recorded, actually. You guys recorded that meeting for Andy. Yeah, you couldn't make it to the meeting, so we did record it.
Recently or?
No, February.
This year.
Yep, because Debbie recorded it. So you should still have it.
Yeah, we'll have it.
I know what Andy's saying though, because we've had some instances where, quite frankly, it becomes a huge financial burden to the county.
It does.
Because who's paying for the experts? And it's purely a private matter, and then sometimes it just becomes an argument between neighbors. And so they will do things to each other to create issues. And, you know, it is something that would I think it would slow down some of the retaliation that they get into when it starts hitting their personal pocket. Because when it's hitting the county pocket and they can just keep arguing with each other and say, well, you study that, or you do this study, or you have these experts, because I was involved in one probably 20 years ago that it was a nightmare. We expended a lot of money, and they just kept doing things against each other, causing more issues, dumping dirt where they shouldn't, closing off culverts where they shouldn't, regrading property where they shouldn't, putting swales, directing water where they shouldn't. I mean, it was a nightmare. So, yeah.
But the biggest thing that I got from Carrie to that point is this does nothing for that. You do not do that with the stormwater. You do that with the board, with an actual drainage board and the creation of that.
Well, and sometimes it can go through just civil litigation.
Right,
That's
but
what we ultimately.
that's
put
where
them
the
to.
drainage board can force that. If we had the proper drainage board, which we've lobbied for some time, but, and even, we had two commissioners in here that day. And I harped on them the same way. I said, this isn't us, this is you guys. You have to create this board, and it has to be done per the statute. It's that simple. Once that's done, then we can do things like that. We can say, this is a civil matter, and wipe our hands of it. But until then, they kept referring it back because we don't have that. And they still, because the commissioners requested this. They basically want to get this going, but it's all for naught because it's not going to solve their problem. And you can listen to the meeting, I harped on them that this is not going to fix your guys' problem. And they just don't get it, we need that board to be properly formed. Yes, because what we have is
Especially
not.
because of this county and the topography of this.
Yeah.
county. It lends itself more to it than some of the other counties. that
But
I've
if you
worked
had that board in place, then everything that you say could happen. Because all they have to do is say, we can't fix this, this is a civil matter, and it's done. Legally, it's done. So I agree totally, Andy. That's where I harped on them, the commissioners and Carrie, and it just doesn't seem to click. They think that we can put something in here, but we can't because we still don't have that law binding board to do what you want to do, which would be just put it right back on them because it is a civil disagreement.
I mean, I'm not opposed to, county surveyor going out and doing what state statute says. My first question is, it's like, until county council gives me
I know.
anything, nothing's gonna happen.
And that's what it all come back to. And I don't know why they wouldn't want to form the proper board. Because there has to be one commissioner serves on it
Right.
at minimum.
Right.
And then you have to have, I think it was a 3 or a 5 person group is the way it read in the state drainage ordinance or statute, whatever it is. So
how hard is it to put that together? Just getting.
the commissioners have to get it done, and their lawyer would have to initiate the whole process
Yeah, an ordinance
and make it
establishing
public.
it.
Yeah, and an ordinance.
And most all counties have. This is definitely a minority.
Three of the surrounding counties.
I mean, most everybody that I know of has that.
Yeah.
They probably
What's our
determine they
role?
meet based upon the need, but
So 20 years ago, the one that she's talking about was, I pushed for it then because I was involved in that mess. And the commissioners did not want a drainage board because they feared legal drains like the plague. So a legal drain is, when you create a legal drain, everybody whose water drains into that, they have to pay an extra property tax to maintain it. And they were dead set against this county having legal drains.
Does this
Because we have to
county
put
put
it in.
together?
Yeah, we have to put them in
And maintain
and
them.
maintain.
The county does.
And Biddle, yeah.
And basically, that board, like in the surrounding counties, that board handles it. They put it out for bid. You know, if these ditches need dipped out, or if it's big tile maintenance, a county drain, they put it all out for bid. They handle all that, but they collect money. They build that fund up.
Kind of like the stormwater drainage plan.
Yes, here in Greensburg. Yes, it is. Yep. And if there's a project upcoming, they'll raise the rates until they get enough money saved up, you know, to do the project.
But we would almost have to have right of ways to have that.
No, not with drainage.
Okay.
That is a different thing in the state of Indiana. If you've got a drainage easement, that's a totally different deal.
And we have that on our county roads.
We do not.
No. But
They give all
but
that.
a legal, a necessary legal drain is.
It's a different, and it's a legal ordeal to go through.
Yeah. I mean, I've always thought our county should have right of ways.
They give them back when I was a little kid on the county roads.
Sounds absurd.
They had them, well, the biggest complaint then was people were making them maintain the ditches. They had to mow them, they had to clean them out.
The county did.
Yeah, and so the county gave them back.
But the
But
county
those
still.
counties still maintain them, but they
Well,
have
still
them, but
mow.
they make you
Not
maintain.
much.
Not like they used
Not like they
to.
used to.
They used to mow them several times a summer. and-
Oh, no kidding.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like a kid, you always saw.
You also, if you put a driveway entrance in, they would either provide an installer culvert because it was in the right of way. That's kind of off tangent, but
No.
that's where it's at. I mean, they need that board.
And once you start that, we own a substantial amount of school district does property in Iowa this farm. And we pay ditch fees.
Yeah.
Every single year, about every 7 to 9 years. We have to pay a ditch cleanout fee where they come in and clean everything. It's a substantial tax that we pay on that.
And that's what held the whole thing up years ago was that group of commissioners. There's been several since who have dug in on it. I thought maybe we had them swung this time, but I'm getting nowhere. I mean, I've talked to them all the same way that we did what we've been trying 10 years for this. And it just, we're not getting anywhere. And that isn't something that goes in that stormwater manual. It's just not. And I think the attempt was, the reason it got in there the last time was because the commissioners pushed that. And that board embraced it. So. All right, I'm off my soapbox. Wound me up, Paul.
Okay, so everybody take this home, think about it over the next few weeks. Come up with any solutions, any problem areas, anything you'd like to see added or subtracted. If you have any comments, please send them to me. Please.
Will we advertise this again?
Yes.
But we don't have to act on it. In other words,
No.
if we can have it advertised
We
several
advertised
times,
twice.
but I just want the word to be out so that we can get some input and maybe rile some stuff up people to go to the commissioners and to push on this for that side of the drainage problem. Because I don't know how else to do it. So.
What is the bigger situation in terms of the pond situation? I feel like we've kind of currently got some verbiage. We've got, like, instead of 10 questions, we've got a funneling process for that. I would assume there would be some level of capability of copying and pasting that information over into this manual or this thing.
So to go along with this, Paul, a lot of your counties, if they do something with ponds, it's the board that I'm talking about.
The drainage.
The drainage board, because they've got the technical review capabilities. And typically this county surveyor is on that board as well, either as a advisor or as a board member, but they've got the capabilities to assess everything that they need to. So that's something to think about as well. You know, that would be the group who would really need that.
Should have.
Yes, and those are public meetings. Typically, they're right after every commissioner meeting, there's a drainage board. That's how most counties are set up. And they're public, they're advertised, so it would be a similar process. So that's something to think about.
So Do we need to step back and, the way that this is currently set up, I would assume was set up as the APC handles all of this drainage information. Do we need to put this on pause if we feel like truly the right thing is to assemble this board? Is it time wasted to
Well,
assemble this
Do
and
we
then?
send that to the
There's-
commissioners saying
There's nothing in this that deals with ponds.
Right.
And this is actually more of, I think this goes with APC.
Okay.
I really do, because it is the whole.
But do we want to make a decision on this prior to having that drainage board?
That's what I'm saying.
Yes,
So
yes, I think we
Because
do.
they're two separate, completely separate.
The only
But the
thing here,
drainage board is what would enforce that, this stuff.
no, not necessarily. No.
But it would change whether we would, and not to keep going back to like
Mhm.
ponds, but
Mhm.
if we would work hard to get a drainage board assembled, it would not be the right thing to put ponds into this document if the APC owns
Yes,
this
that is
process,
correct.
right? So do we need to work hard and get a yes or no from the group of the commissioners, whether a drainage board, yes or no, is not going to occur before we're at a spot where we need to approve this? And then that would tell us whether to include or not include that in that
Yes.
document.
I like that idea, just because we're not in a rush on this. We've got this now without the permits. I mean,
Right.
it's all here in place already. So I agree. And this could give us some leverage on the commissioners to force them to make a decision.
I guess that's kind of where I was
Yeah, that's
saying,
a great idea.
you know,
Because the commissioners really want. this.
yeah,
They do.
they want something, so we want something, let's
Yes.
make them, force them to do that.
I think that's a plan to move forward with that then. And then depending on what their answer is, we'll know what to do with that section. And then we need to, I guess, decide, so that may handle the pond, yes or no, where that falls. But how about large roofs?
So that would be in here.
In here.
Any impervious surface or change in surface use.
Okay.
And that's where I think the APC would be better suited to this, because we're going to be dealing with land change use. Does that make sense?
How about a really large commercial agricultural building? Where does that fall now? Is it regulated? Is it exempt? Is it not exempt?
Well, right now, we're saying it's exempt.
But I think what Paul's saying is, where is the line for
Commercial.
exemption?
If you file for a IDIM permit,
Well, we're talking about square footage, right? That 10,000 square feet.
Except in that.
Ag
Oh,
exemption.
that's completely fine.
So it's ag exemption exempt up to,
But you could have it up to a certain square footage, couldn't you?
Yeah, we would just have to determine that square footage.
I got you. But it's not in there now.
Yeah, because the state is pretty ag exempt.
And there are some very, very large structures that are a non-penetratable surface that I don't feel like necessarily fall underneath of the protecting the home farm kind of a situation. It probably should be
Yeah, we
subject
get
to
them all
some
the
kind
time.
of
The square footage is gonna have to be determined, and that's something, there's some homework. Actually look at some facilities, because you're gonna be surprised even an acre. You know, any grain storage facility, any addition there, an acre is nothing, by the time you gravel and everything. So you need to determine and talk to some people, what kind of square footage? Where's that line?
And then the question would be, would that also apply them to the rest?
Yeah, because there's been instances where there's some very large buildings that went up that were just residential buildings, but they're pretty big
Because that
buildings.
could become an issue, especially if you have some type of a development where you're not on this big of a footprint, but you're really putting a lot of hardscape surfaces in there with roofs and driveways and patios and the way that, I mean, I know there's usually drainage studies involved in the subdivision developments, but probably if you're exempting out, once you hit a certain level, it probably should go both ways for ag or.
And I wonder where that is, because when you start talking to 10,000 square foot, and the reason I asked about it a little bit was because it's not in this county, it's Dearborn County, but I'm getting ready to start a house that's, 6,700 square foot under the main roof. Garages, covered porches, house, and then you put paved driveway and.
Well, your drive's pretty much, you'll catch 10,000 in no time. By the time you do drive and turn around and they put an outbuilding. up.
Yeah, and it's 750 foot just to the turn. And it's all gonna be asphalt.
But, I mean, obviously, you're in different, you're gonna end up in categories too.
You just gotta be careful with,
How you work.
yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I mean, that's, needs some discussion,
Yeah.
Yes.
sounds like.
So at the very least, we need another meeting. And should I have the consultant, the engineer to be here?
Yeah.
To answer these questions, and help us navigate.
Yeah. And I'm gonna go to the commissioners and plead our case. That's all I can do again.
Is it too much to ask them to be here for that? I don't know how that works.
I'm gonna go to their meeting.
Yeah, they can't, they all can't.
No, they all three can't be, yes.
But Jeremy has been on me about getting this done,
Yeah.
so.
And I've been on him about how it needed to work, and it's just not sinking in. It's just not. But I can go to their meeting and catch all three of them.
Yeah.
I mean, what have we got to lose? If I corner all three of them at the same time, maybe it'll sink in.
Right.
Well,
Okay.
That is it.
All right, I have one more thing. Ordinances and comprehensive plan. I've had a couple people come to me and say, it's time to redo them. I personally don't believe it's time,
we just
but
get
just got done. But if it is the consensus that we need
Are
to,
there some areas that we feel that we have some issues?
Well, I think that's what we need to start with. I mean, this is good to bring up now. Let's look at it. Because I've got a couple little things that I would like to see change, but it's nothing major. And we change things.
and we can change little things.
Yeah.
If we're gonna do a comprehensive plan, I am not for just tweaking it a little bit. I am for doing it. Because unless, I don't think it's fair to change what we put out. If we worked so hard on it and we tried to get the community involved, we tried to get everybody in it. We did monthly surveys, we did hand surveys, we did everything. So if we're gonna do it, I think we gotta do that again.
Yeah, oh yeah. If you're gonna do a comp plan, yes.
Yeah, that's.
I'm talking ordinances is all I was looking at.
Yeah, all right.
Do you think, Krista, there currently is no process, so what I imagine is there is a concern for either a sector of our population or maybe just a select few that have got, I just doubt that there is a mass desire to review all of our ordinances. My guess is when someone comes into your office, they
It's one
think,
specific
There-
thing, one
we
item.
really think this isn't right. So is it wise that we kind of have an ongoing thing? Like if someone doesn't like something, thinks that something isn't right, I'm not asking them to write a document on what they think is wrong with it and how it should be, but should there be some process that, hey, here is an ordinance revision recommendation that they basically state, and then maybe we have 10 signatures, and then we review that so that it doesn't go like 8 years of someone having a real burning problem, and then, or 5, whatever our normal cycle is on ordinance review. I feel like, I guess it was 4 or 5 years ago that we did that, right?
Yeah,
But
that's what I was thinking.
that was a lengthy process. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be doing that again, but to give them some help that at least
Yes.
there's a heard voice that we review what they think is wrong. And if we all agree, we don't have to wait that long to.
Yeah, because it could go out to us, and if there is an agreement, yeah, this does need
We need to
review,
look at
this.
What I would say is don't have them to a petition though.
Okay,
Because you're gonna get into some legal ramifications.
okay,
If they have an issue, they can give it to the office and then it can be looked at, but then it would be the board's decision whether to
Sure.
move forward
to
on it.
act on it.
If you start getting petitions going with signatures, then it could throw us into arenas where we would have to do a lot of activity
Okay,
when it's not something that maybe they're not aware of why it is this
Yeah.
way or whatever, so I just.
well, that makes sense, that's fine, I
No,
just,
but the list of people making a recommendation, we keep a list and
Send it
Do
out.
that list every
we decide
so often.
whether, when and where we review the list.
yeah. I've been in situations where it takes coming from a unique perspective to see the position, you know, and if this board probably doesn't hear that near as much as you do, but there probably needs to be some process to get that to us. So,
Yeah, and one of the most specific requests I've had lately is the solar ordinance. I've had a couple, well, more than a couple of people request that the solar ordinance be updated.
We just did.
I like our solar ordinance, but these were not bad ideas. One idea was to take the solar ordinance and require dual use. If it's the right place and the right time for a commercial solar development, then it needs to be dual use. You need to be able to graze or farm underneath it, something, but my opinion on that is that it's gonna make them raise the panels, separate the panels, and it's gonna put the cost and the effectiveness out of line. So I can't say that I agree with it. But it's better than just having panels up there. And maybe if they really need it, maybe they would do that, so.
we discussed that when we were discussing the ordinance, and that was the basic consensus was it's just gonna add more panels, actually. And
More
acreage.
acreage.
Yeah, that's what I mean, more area covered.
But if they have to raise them and if they have to find that dual purpose, then it's going to put the cost out, so it's not feasible to even come in. And I think that was what
The other one, does the county have for them even coming? Is it big
Tax
tax
dollars.
generator?
Oh, yeah.
Is it?
Huge.
I just never really knew.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, I know Rush County, it's in talking with those commissioners, it's unbelievable what they'll be able to do if they get everything through the way that they're trying to. That is the
Yeah, but
whole
how long
push.
are the tax dollars gonna be there?
They set theirs up differently than that. They did it actually more like a TIF district, so it's 20 years. They set it up on 20 years of payments, and they lump summed, they did the first 5 years
So
heavy.
it ends after 20 years, they don't pay any tax on it?
No, the way that that's set up, with like that being a TIF, the tax will continue on however that was prorated for the life expectancy of the facility. Then they have to come back to try to renegotiate, you know.
Or they
It's not an
retire.
abatement, it's more of, because that's how the
Yeah, you-
battery facility, yeah, the battery facility that we approved is the same way. That is not a property tax, it's prorated on the amount of energy that thing can store. When it's in use, they pay so many dollars. It's almost like a usage tax for them, and it's a heck of a lot more than any property tax would have been. That's why they set it up that way.
I got you.
But Brian had the one with the limit on percentage of farm ground.
Yeah, that's my next thing, he said if it's the
3%.
right time and place, do we do a percentage?
I think you don't,
I
because
don't
that's
think you
income to the
do.
landowner. And
Yeah, basically, you're capping it on whoever gets it,
Right.
is the lucky one.
Yeah, that's.
That was my dilemma with that one.
The first 3% is the
Well,
only
you're
one.
getting $1,200 an acre.
Yeah, he figured out,
You're not-
he had the figures, and it was 4,000 acres, maybe, 4,000 or 5,000 acres.
It was more than that, because the one that is getting ready to be.
No, that was the 3%.
Oh, yeah,
In other words, the
Maybe.
one that may come through wouldn't even be big enough for it.
How much is that proposed? 4,500?
4,500.
That's what the,
One of them.
yeah, I mean, that was what they talked about, I don't know.
They're gonna pick one.
basically, there's some counties that have adopted that where it's a percentage of the tillable acres in the county.
Well,
That's
then
all
I don't
it's
see how we can control that, because if we give these first
Yeah.
3%
I know.
this, then
I
how
agree.
are we gonna tell this guy that he can't when it's right, when it would just fall right in
Yeah,
line?
I agree, it's a land use,
I just,
it's a property
I mean,
right thing, man.
property rights, but at the same time, your neighbor's rights. And this 4,500 acres, I'm gonna have to drive through it 3 times a day, 4 times a day, and I don't particularly care for that. I
Well,
can't see driving down Van Daly Road now.
any of the
Solar
ordinances,
panels get up there.
any ordinance request you get though, I'm on call, that would be great.
You know,
Yeah, that's not a
I've
problem.
had phone calls, not on this last new one, but the one, I had, I'm pretty fired up, and I saw his position on it, and basically I think that the response back to those people are, what do you recommend that we, how should we handle this as a county, so that is probably, oftentimes, don't bring your problem, bring me your recommended solution, right? So if we have something in text at that point, it's up for consideration, we can all talk about it, so I think that, as opposed to saying, well, we've already got an ordinance, that's how it is, and then people just, get more frustrated, ask for them to provide a recommended solution, we can discuss it, and not let things get so long, maybe.
Well, the thing about this, like solar, wind, a lot of these energy, our ordinances are outdated the day after we write.
That's right.
I mean, it is just constantly evolving so fast that you do have to take that approach because we can't stay ahead of the technology.
Yeah, I think that's something we can implement. Debbie, can you do that? No,
Thanks, Debbie.
I'm taking the next 4 years off.
I thought you'd be retired by then.
That's right, that's what you
Is
say,
that why you're
I'm
doing
just
it?
taking retirement.
Okay, we've got our homework. I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.